Welcome to the Streets and People podcast presented by Get Around Cabo Car Free. Get Around Cabo Car Free is a volunteer community movement advocating for more transport options for people who can't drive in Caboolture and Morayfield in Queensland. In today's podcast, we'll be covering one of these three broad topics. It might be Road Rules 360, where we discuss Queensland's road rules, the legislation, the design for people walking, biking, in wheelchairs or on a scooter. It might be Not Everyone Drives, where we chat with people whose transport options don't include a car in a car-dependent society. And it might be People and Projects, where our conversations are with people working on a specific aspect of inclusive transportation. Today we're doing one of our Road Rules 360s episodes, and I'm here with John Burrill in the studio. Fantastic. We've got the fans on because it's so humid today. I know you were just in New Zealand for several weeks, so yes. It was snowing.
It's a culture shock back here from over there. 25 degrees difference pretty much.
John, you worked at the TMR many moons ago, gave that up and recovering from the experience.
Yes, truly retired.
And truly retired. So that was sort of 6 years ago, something like that. Everything we say here is to entertain and inform. We are not giving any legal advice on all that sort of stuff. Yeah,
correct.
You have a good sense of the road rules and you have an understanding.
20 odd years working with the road rules in transport and main roads, and I've tried to keep a pace with changes and things that have been happening since I retired, but don't catch everything. I miss some things, and it's a bit annoying when you make a comment and somebody comes by, oh, the rules changed, and I look and sure enough they have.
Well, it's good to be humble and to go, okay, well, I didn't get that one right. That's why it's always good to not be self-righteous, because one day you'll be wrong. All right, today we're doing Ryan's question. Yep. Ryan lives somewhere in Queensland, I think on the Gold Coast or somewhere. So it was very exciting to have a question from our listener. So that was fantastic. Yep. First time we've heard from him. All right, the question is, after a discussion and listening to episode 27 of your podcast, I have a question about who has right-of-way in a specific scenario. Episode 27 is Nick's question about who has right-of-way. When the bicycle is going straight ahead and a car is turning left, who has right-of-way? And if you want to know the answer to that, you can go and listen to Nick's question.
It's a similar question. There are subtle differences.
A car is stopped at a red light in the left lane and indicating to turn left. A bicycle rider is riding on the left of the car, not in a bike lane. Well, there are so few of them anyway, it would be difficult to be in a bike lane.
Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't make any difference anyway. The actual application of this. Yeah.
A bicycle rider is riding on the left of the car from a way back, long enough that the car had not passed it when approaching the light. The light turns green, the car turns left at the same time as the bike attempts to overtake on the left, heading straight through the intersection, and the car collides with the bike. Who is at fault here? Does the car driver have a responsibility to shoulder check when turning left on a green arrow?
Well, there's quite a few questions there. Just the last one first is probably the easiest way to do it. Yes, it is the driver's responsibility to check the mirror and check over their shoulder before you diverge in any situation. We can establish that right from the word go. It is a requirement that as a driver you know what's happening all around you. Even if there may be blind spots in your car, there is in just about every single vehicle.
Yeah. The thing about that though, so you've got a bike way back behind you on the left-hand side, you've got the car going ahead. The thing that struck me, because this is the second time we've recorded this, unfortunately audio didn't work the first time, so we're redoing it. When we were talking about this last time, what really struck me was that the driver has to check behind on the left, behind directly for a car, behind on the right, in front, and then turning left, and then looking for pedestrians. That's too much of a mental load to expect a driver. We definitely need better design of streets, because to expect a human to be able to look immediately behind on the left, immediately behind, immediately behind on the right, immediately in front and on the opposite side, because often cars are coming in from the right-hand side in the opposite direction, turning into that lane as well. And then you want to turn left, and then you've got pedestrians on the left, and then pedestrians on the right, and then you've got pedestrians in the middle.
I think it's fair to say, to sum up your comment, driving is not always an easy task. It is a difficult task, and to do it properly, to do it well, means you are giving all of your attention to it.
But I think that's unrealistic. This is what we were talking about before we came on air. We were talking about another situation. And I think it's completely unrealistic to expect that a driver should have 360 vision all the time. A cyclist should understand what is going through the driver's mind and be aware of what's going on. Like, that's just too much expectation on a human being. We just don't have those capacities. No one has those capacities. I've been reading Wes Marshall's book, Killed by a Traffic Engineer. What was really clear in that book, and I really recommend it if you are interested in this space. It's American with American road rules, so not all of it applies. By the way, Australia comes up really well on the road safety studies. This is something I didn't realise. What was very interesting about that is it says, stop blaming the driver or the pedestrian or the cyclist for the problems, for being victims in a car crash, whether they cause a crash, whether on the receiving end of a crash, or whether they just happen to be in the wrong place, the wrong time. That to expect that people should be able to do that is actually about poor engineering practice, because we're saying that you have to be 100% aware all the time. Now, that's excluding somebody who's got a couple of kids in the back going, but stop, I said stop, I don't want to do that, are you hitting me? You know, all those things that kids do. Of course, you were never like that, John.
I don't know so much. I've had kids too, so I know what you're talking about.
Or, you know, you're having a conversation with somebody and your partner and they say something, or the phone has a text or a call or whatever, or you've got your maps and you're looking left and right. I very seldom sit in a car because it's so terrifying for me, because people drive, they're tailgating and they don't realise. Or people are very, very unaware of how bad they are at driving. This is what I've discovered. Anyway, it's a bit of a digression, but I do think that basically the whole road rules are set up as if people have 360 awareness, they are fully engaged, they aren't tired, they haven't got a cold, they haven't got kids screaming in the back, they haven't got a partner who's disputing, they haven't got the radio on or whatever telling some horrible news. It's too much to expect. We really need to go, what do we expect from our engineers and our road designers to make our roads safe? Because currently they are really unsafe. So this is basically what the question is asking, is how safe is this road?
Kind of, but from a road rules perspective, and I think coming to the crux of the question itself, that cyclist, this is something we've spoken about previously, there's two rules that kick in, and the most important aspect is that if the cyclist is overtaking to the left of the car and the car is actually turning, then it's the cyclist's responsibility to hold back at the car goes. Cyclist is basically failing to give way if they try and continue effectively cutting off the path of the car. But you see, the critical thing is what the rules talks about is the car must be turning. If the car is actually in the process of turning, then the cyclist is the one that's responsible. Turning the tables, if the cyclist is overtaking, or rather not necessarily overtaking, if the cyclist is just riding along and the car comes up, overtakes the cyclist and tries to turn left directly in front of it, that becomes the car's responsibility. And it really is all a matter of timing. If the cyclist is in a particular place, it's likely to be the cyclist's fault. If the cyclist is in a different place and a different position and the car is in a different place, in other words overtaking the cyclist, then it becomes the car driver's responsibility. Which takes us back to Nick's question. The conclusion we came to after consulting with the TMR was that yes, in that situation that Nick described, it was the car that was at fault.
So when you say the intention to turn left, so does that mean that you have your indicator on?
Yes.
Now you're
Have to have your indicator on.
All right, you're supposed to have your indicator on for how long before you arrive at the intersection?
What the rule says is for long enough. It doesn't give a distance, it doesn't give a time.
Okay.
It just says for long enough to make sure that all the vehicles and traffic and people around you see that signal.
Well, that strikes me as being...
It's a vague rule, open-ended rule. How long is long? Long enough, deliberately vague, because personally I think it would be better if it was given a time. In other words, you must signal for 3 seconds or 5 seconds or whatever, which is the case if you're moving away from a parked position. If you're parked on the side of the road and moving off, you're required to give, I think it's 6 seconds, was it 5 seconds of signal before you actually move off. But while you're moving and signalling to either turn or diverge, all the rule says is you must signal for long enough to make sure others around you have seen the signal.
There you go. We were only just talking about coming up and turning left.
Yeah.
So you've got to indicate, you've got to turn, you've got to have 360 vision, you've got to be aware of everything. This is kind of crazy and it's kind of nuts. Definitely when we get around to revising the road rules, when I've got my magic wand and I design the road rules according to how I want, I'm definitely going to be changing that one, that's for sure. All right, anything else we need to talk about? So I think in an email when I received Ryan's question and I forwarded you that question, you wrote back and you said, in this instance, the cyclist is to give way whether it's a road shoulder or a bike lane. Queensland road rules, sections 141, paragraph 1 and paragraph 2, and sections 148A. As for the driver, it's not specifically required for them to shoulder check, but it is good practice to ensure everyone is safe on the road. Was there anything else you wanted to cover off before we close out on Ryan's question?
I don't think so. I think that's pretty much captured it.
All right.
Yeah,
well, I think we'll close out. It's a nice short little episode, but we've answered the question, which is great.
Yeah,
All right. Okay. Thanks, John. Thanks for enjoying Streets and People presented by Get Around Cabo Car Free. We publish our podcast regularly at the usual places and on our website where you can find out more about us. getaroundcabocarfree.com.au. That's www.getaround, get around, that's pretty straightforward. Cabo, C-A-B-O, that's short for Caboolture. Car Free, C-A-R-F-R-E-E. There's no hyphen in that. .com.au. Our theme music is The Thief on AM Sound, which is just like our cars on our streets, always stealing the space. So let's stop that thief.